wrestler. We met a wrestler in the flesh.
Oh, yeah. Right, so I have hopefully established by now, 20 episodes in, that I have a long list of encounters with wrestlers. Some have gone well, some have gone badly, and most of them have been somewhat embarrassing or laughable in some way. And this is a more recent one, I would say, that I'm going to talk about. And this is yet another one that we have to give thanks to Inside the Ropes for this one. And this is meeting the living legend, the one and only, the first Intercontinental Champion who won that title in a not so real tournament, Pat Patterson, and a man who is very, very old now. And he's not the kind of person you would expect Inside the Ropes to take over. But what I will say is that Inside the Ropes has always kind of tried to do these kind of more obscure things as well. They do the big mainstream stuff like your Hall of Famers, but they don't shy away from a slightly more obscure name. And so meeting Pat Patterson was a definite must go for when I saw the tickets going on sale. Did you see this show when it was being advertised? Did you think about going?
Not really. I don't even remember it being advertised, but when I remember it happening because I remember the picture of you with Pat. That's the only recollection I have of this show.
Right. Okay. So here's the thing, folks. Pat Patterson has been in the wrestling industry for decades upon decades now. I think he's now in his 80s. He still works in WWE to this day. And Pat is of French Canadian heritage, and he still speaks. He speaks English fluently, but it can be at times. There can be at times be a bit of a language barrier. I think, even though he knows his English and can hold his conversation in English, and he's worked speaking English for many, many years, as people like Mick Foley have written about in his book. He can sometimes come out with some funny sounding slip ups, you know. And the thing I'm remembering the most is when Mick Foley and Have a Nice Day is talking about Pat Patterson talking about something going down when they're booking a match, and he's going, and at this point, the Undertaker's going to go absolutely banana.
I wish I was at this show just to hear him talk, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, just hearing that voice live would be great.
Man, so this is it, okay? Like, it was in the garage, I think, and by this point, I was working at the school that I've not long left. Like, so I worked at a school for a couple of years, and this was me like a month or two into my first year there, right? And this show was on a school night, so even though I knew I wasn't going to be drinking or anything like that, I was still a bit anxious about being up a wee bit later on a school night because I was worried, oh my god, I'm only going to go and like drink a Coke or something like that.
Yeah.
But how will that affect me the next day? I was that paranoid about it because I was so new to that place. And it also meant that I went there fully suited. So, like, like a wrestling show or Inside the Ropes, you get all these guys, these big sweaty guys with black t-shirts and black jeans and replica belts and stuff. And there's me, full on suit and tie and shirt, and I'm wearing my glasses and stuff. I just totally stick out like a sore thumb. And I found myself having to do this at a few different shows. When I met Goldust, I was fully suited. And there was also a wee show that Inside the Ropes did with... it was when they announced the Undertaker tour, and it was a free show, and it was Kenny McIntosh interviewing Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic,
right?
And Joe Hendry, just as a free show, and at the end they announced the Undertaker tour.
That's right.
It was at that show that two separate people, one of them was Joe Hendry, thought I was Adam Pacitti.
Really?
Like. Yeah, so the brother of somebody who, because Adam Pacitti was at the show, and because I was there in my suit and I had my glasses on and my beard and stuff, like the younger brother of a guy I know clocked me, and I think because he kind of recognized me as his brother's friend,
right?
Went, oh my god, are you? No, oh, I thought you were Adam Pacitti for a second.
That's good.
And then when Joe Hendry was doing his interview on stage with Kenny McIntosh, I was in the front row with Robert, and I say he thought it was Adam Pacitti. He didn't really, because in fact what he did was he goes, "I just realised you've got the Adam Pacitti stunt double in the front row here."
Oh god, so, did that make you all embarrassed and stuff, or was that like a claim to fame?
Well, it did, but that night I got home because I used to work with Joe Hendry's girlfriend. I messaged her that night saying, "Can you just let Joe know that I take that as the highest compliment?"
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was suited and booted for this one, for the Pat Patterson show, and it was up in the that kind of upstairsy bit of the garage, the G2 bit, the smaller venue.
Yeah.
and we had that lovely moment again where you kind of queue up and you see them for the first time, and it just shows you it doesn't even need to be a massive physically imposing person, even if it is just kind of a reserved kind of old man like Pat Patterson. It's still special when you see them for the first time. And I also think for Pat, I just was drawn to it as well because not just because of him and his legacy and how important he is to the history of wrestling, but just because of his age. And I thought, well, when else am I ever going to have an opportunity to meet Pat Patterson?
Exactly.
So I knew that I wanted to go there. I knew I wanted to buy a copy of his book. I knew I wanted to get it signed because I love collecting autographed books, not just wrestling ones, but any kind of book signed by its author. So I bought the book, and I realized when we were in the queue that there was a guy kind of with Pat, and then I realized the closer I got that this guy was like a translator for him, because even though Pat speaks English, you put a guy who's grown up, knowing Canadian or American English, and then you put him in Glasgow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like this guy was occasionally just intervening in conversations and just making something clear to Pat and just making sure that Pat understood what the fan was saying. And the first thing like that threw me off, and this was what started the embarrassing episode. So like you need to know that this guy's there as the interpreter. And so we're getting closer and we're getting closer, and then it's my turn to meet Pat. And I'm standing there with my suit, and I've got this copy of his book, which I'm holding right here in my hands. And so I'm walking up to him, and the guy who's the interpreter, I then realize is also kind of handing the stuff to get signed to Pat and doing all that kind of stuff that you get at these shows.
So
but I got
the interpreter, do you know him? Do we know him? Is he a personality? Or is he just a guy?
He's just a guy. Well, I think he does these things for Pat in general. I think
he's just like Pat's guy, right? Okay.
Yeah, you got the impression that actually, do you know what Kenny McIntosh actually said at the show who he is to Pat, and I wonder if he's maybe like a nephew or something like that. I got the sense that there might be some connection between the two, and that he's not just there for the tour. But I may have just totally made that up, so my apologies if I have. But there's just something kicking in the back of my mind saying that. Anyway, so this guy comes up to me to take the book off me, and that's when I got my first good look at him, and that's the moment I realized that he's the spitting image of one of my pals that I used to work with, who, strangely enough, weird coincidence, also used to work with Kenny McIntosh in another life, right?
Really?
But so this is this weird thing. So for a minute I thought, what are you doing here? And then I hear him speaking fluent French, right?
Right, yeah.
So that threw me. So then I was out of it. So then when I got to Pat, I'd forgotten what I wanted to say. And the truth of the matter is, what I wanted to say to Pat was, hi, my name's Glen, and I'm a teacher, and I run an LGBT society at my school. This is all true.
Yeah.
I told them all that I'm meeting you tonight, and your story is really inspiring to them. And so from me and from them, thank you very much. And for the most part, that's kind of what came out. But I was so thrown by seeing this guy who looked just like my mate. So then I got nervous. And when I get nervous, I get really fast and I get really quick, and it's like that, and you can't really understand anything that I'm saying. So now you've got three things going on. I'm really flustered and getting a bit sweaty. I'm trying to speak to Pat, but I'm Scottish, and I'm also speaking too fast. So I go, hi Pat, my name's Glen, and so I'm running the LGBT club at my school, and we're all really inspired by you, and so thank you very much for that. And he just looks at me vacantly and kind of just just looks at me, and then he looks to this guy, and then the guy asks me to say it again. So I go, hi Pat, my name's Glen. I'm a teacher, and I also run an LGBT club at school, and my students we've talked about your story today at the club, and they're really excited that I'm meeting you, and we all just wanted to say thank you very much for being you and for having your story. And Pat just looks at me vacantly and that doesn't get a word of it. Still doesn't understand. You need to understand as well that it's also really noisy because fans are filing in, but then the fans who've already met Pat have already then just taken their seats and they're chatting and they're drinking beers and all that. God. Yeah, so it's noisy in there, right? And so then this guy steps in and he speaks beautiful French to Pat and he gets it all out, and because now he's picked up on what I was trying to say. So then Pat goes, oh great, yes, okay, and so we go in for the photo, and we take this lovely picture, and it's one of my favorite pictures that I've got with a
I love
wrestling
it. It's really
personality.
nice because you're wearing your suit as well. You look really smart.
He's really sweet in it because he's like doing this thing with his hands, he's like a wee nervous sort of thing, because he doesn't really do this sort of thing very often.
Of course, yeah.
So then it gets to the book signing, and we have to go through what my name is again. And so he goes, "Hey, what's your name?" And this is Pat speaking, and I'm like, "It's Glen." So he starts to write to Glen, Glen, and then something, he must have got a bit confused. And this, I'm not saying this I'm not poking fun, I'm not being disrespectful, I'm just explaining what happened, because it comes from the fact that he is fluent in 2 languages. And one pet hate I have is when people make fun of people who speak English as their second language for having an accent, because they're the clever ones.
Exactly.
Who can speak 2 languages. You're making fun of their accent, then you're the idiot because you can't even speak 2. You can barely master your own first language, So but that's where I think this next hilarious thing came from, is the fact that he's juggling around 2 languages in his head. So he writes Glen, and I think this was partially my fault, because I always say I'm Glen. This is when I'm meeting wrestlers. I go, I'm Glen with 1 N, and I think I must have thrown him, because he then wrote Glen. Wait for it, D, Glend.
Oh, because you went 1 N, oh no.
So my book says 2 Glend, but it gets better. So he writes 2 Glend, and then he pauses and goes, "Oh no, I added the D. Hey, you get an extra letter just for free."
Nice.
And then he signs it, and Pat Patterson has the most beautiful signature. So I'm going to send you a picture of this now, Chris. Have you got your phone there?
Yeah.
So I'm going to send you this. I'm talking away from a microphone here.
That's all right.
And you'll see the 2 Glend, but you'll also see why I almost like it more now that it says Glend, because it's more special, I think, because I'm never going to sell these things, not as long as I'm alive. And it's just now it's not just a nice signed item; it's something with a story behind it, and I love that. It made my personal experience with Pat feel that bit more personal. Do you know what I mean? So I'm taking the picture now.
You get another letter for free. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So so here we go. He's French Canadian, not Italian, mate.
Baba da Poopy. Here, have you seen that Legends of Wrestling Roundtable thing on the network? They used to do it on WWE 24/7 or whatever it is.
No,
remember they used to
I know this. I know it. Yeah.
But Pat used to be on that a lot, and he was great because, and he's really, what I found from him as well, because obviously it's a second language, he's just a really funny guy. His
so
pattern and
funny.
stuff is so funny, and he's got what I find the funniest thing in life is when someone else is dying laughing. You know what I mean? Like when someone's in hysterics, I have to laugh as well. So he's got a really funny laugh, not funny laugh, like a really good laugh, and it just always cracks me up. I like this. It's a nice blue page. Very nice.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So do you see 2 Glend, Pat Patterson? So a couple of things came out from this. First of all, don't you agree? It's a gorgeous signature, isn't it?
It is, and I like the underline. It's like the Undertaker signature, the underline after.
Oh yeah, Undertaker and Pat Patterson, probably my 2 favorite wrestling signatures.
Yeah.
So we laughed about it together in that moment, and like I say, that for some people, like hardcore collecting fans, I don't know, maybe that would have annoyed some people, them getting the name wrong. But what kind of idiot's going to go, nah, you need to get me another book and get it right? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I like it more now because, like I say, it just feels like it's a more special memory for that hilarious spelling mistake.
That's great.
So we giggled about it, and I took it away. Unfortunately, after that, all my friends started calling me Glend. And my name on my group chat with my mates became Glend for quite a while.
Are you sure that you didn't just have a cold and you were like, "My name is Glendon"?
It was quite possible at that time of year. I think it was in October or something. But you're talking, Jesus, you're talking about his good banter, right? Then after that, we had the show, and he was brilliant, and he had a great. He had a really good way of telling stories. And the funny thing is that Kenny at the beginning said, this guy's here as the interpreter. So if there's a communication breakdown, if he doesn't quite get what I'm saying, he'll come on and help. But to my recollection, he never had to go on once. Kenny had to slow down his speech a wee bit and speak clearly at times. But Pat Patterson just went on these big rambling stories, and it was great. And my only regret about that night is that I had to leave early because I ended up getting a really, really bad headache that night, and probably all the Diet Coke and the not drinking any fluids because I wanted to stay there, not have to run to the loo. Shot myself in the foot there, so I missed the end of the show. But the bit that I saw, the good 2/3 of it was great fun, and probably one of those inside the rope shows. Whereas they're all fun, they're all special. Like that one has a particularly special place in my heart just because of that nice wee episode, that wee interaction with him. So if you're listening to this, if you go to our Instagram, I'm sure at some point this week we'll post my picture with him and a picture of the much adored to Glen copy of Pat's book, which I've actually still not read. It's called Accepted: How the First Gay Superstar Changed WWE. And it's ghost written, and but I think Bruce Pritchard said that he really enjoyed reading Pat's book, and of course they're friends. So maybe one of these days I'll get round to picking it up and giving it a read.
Well, it's a good thing that it's ghost written, because then every word would end in a D. So
just as well it's called Accepted.
Yeah. Yeah, accepted. D. Did he talk about his story in that? And obviously he did, but like, what did he really go into detail about his story about being the first kind of openly gay wrestler back in a time where that wasn't really accepted?
He did, but with that said, the tone of the evening was very light-hearted and comedic. So, like, he did talk about it, but it wasn't. There was nothing too heavy that night. And I think if you want to get a real sense of how much of a struggle it was, then you got to get the book.
Yeah, totally. I'd be a fascinating read, actually.
Yeah. One thing I've always wanted to do is hear stories from Kenny McIntosh and the Inside the Ropes crew about just taking him on that tour, because they did like 3 or 4 nights with him, I think.
Right.
And I think he just must be such a funny guy to be on the road with.
Yeah.
So, or to chaperone around and to take care of. So I'd love to hear more from what he was like on the tour for people who were with him for a few nights. But yeah, it was a good show. And if you ever get the chance to see him, I would go. But you just don't know if you'll ever get the chance to do so again. He's getting on as our Pat.
He is. Well, he's just a good guy, though, isn't he? He's just a great story, and very much respect to the legend that is the first ever Intercontinental Champion. And even if the tournament never happened, you know what? Other things never happened, and we still talk about it. You know what I mean? So, as far as I'm concerned, it did happen, and he's the first ever champion, and that's good in my book. And for those people who say, "Oh, well, he actually wasn't the first Intercontinental Champion," God's sake, do you know what I mean?
He was. He bloody well was. The tournament, even if the tournament never happened, he was still the first champion.
Yeah.
1979.
A bit of trivia.
I've never seen so many replica Intercontinental titles in one place in my life.
Really?
Of course, even though he never held like the physical versions of the title that people buy in mass nowadays, right? How could you not get your replica Intercontinental title signed by him if you had one? You have to.
Yeah.
There was a guy I met actually at the show who had I never got his name, but we chatted for a while in the queue, and he had like the kind of the more modern the Cody Intercontinental belt, the white strap but the classic design. And he had his rule with the signatures on the belt was it doesn't matter what version of the belt you held, as long as you are an Intercontinental Champion, you can sign it.
Yep.
And get this, it'd been signed by like Austin, Jericho, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, China had China's signature on it. Yeah, that was a big deal, that one. And a few others. Like it was full to the brim with signatures on both sides. Kurt Angle had signed it. I'd love to think D'Lo Brown has signed it, but I think I've just made that up. But it just felt like this perfect thing. And like there's a lot of signed belts online, but the fact that he's got all those signatures, and you've also got people who've sadly passed, like China on there. Yeah. The fact that he now has it also a Pat Patterson signature, I mean, come on, that's got to be one of the most valuable IC belts out there. I really admired it, and you could tell this guy really took care of it. He had a proper big case for it, like a saxophone case, like a suitcase. Yeah. So it went in its packet, and then it stretched out, and then he would carry it like a suitcase. That's great. And so if you're out there, man, if you're listening, much respect to you, and I would love to see that thing again one day. I'd love to see how many signatures he's added to it. He'll not have no bloody room for it anymore. That's the thing.
Exactly. I wonder, did anyone sign like the nameplate?
No, there was nothing. It was just the straps. There was nothing on the plates. Jeff had signed it as well because he's got quite a distinctive signature.
Yeah, I was going to say Jeff wanted to sign on Mad plate of the world title. Remember?
Yeah. I've never actually seen anyone do that, signing the plate. I've never seen that. That seems wrong.
I like the idea of having a belt signed by people who held the title, right? But then I have it signed by John Morrison for some reason, right? And I think then I changed my tune, And I was like, oh no, it's people who I thought deserved to be the champion. But realistically, that was just a cop out. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just wanted him to win the title. You know? So I could say that I don't really care like if he's a champion nowadays, but I just want him to win a world title to say, oh look, it's on the belt. I predicted it in 2011. But
well, it's funny because the only belt I have now is my replica tag belt that like Robert got me, and it's kind of our friendship bracelets or these. It's the current Raw Tag Team Championships.
Yeah.
And I don't really want anyone to sign it, with the exception of Matt and Jeff, because the Hardy Boys are what Robert and I always bonded over. And even though I've met Matt and Jeff, I've got both their autographs and different things here and there. That's the one exception I would make, is if I could get them to sign like either end of the straps. Like that would be
really cool. Yeah, because Jeff could do like some mad weird thing all the way up the side of the strap, couldn't he? Because he's mad artist. Sure. Cool. Well, it's a great story. I love hearing your Meet a Wrestler stories. And what will the next one be? Who knows? Ooh.